Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This time out, a special first look at a brand new product from PreSonus. Let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to the brand new StudioLive RM32AI. Now, this is a rack mount version of the StudioLive AI console that includes an incredible amount of features and allows control from Mac, PC, or iOS. We'll go in depth to look at the features of this console, but let's take a tour of the hardware box first. We'll begin with the front panel. Dominating the center of the front panel, we have 32 XLR inputs. Those will accept mic or line level, they have phantom power, and they also can be phase reversed. We have a bank of 32 LED indicators that show us signal present as well as overload on those input channels. On the far upper right, we have a pair of XLR outputs. Now, those are the main outputs that you'd use to feed your main speakers. And we also have a mono output. That can be routed as a separate mix, or you can set those three outputs up as an LCR mix if you like. Across the bottom of the front panel, we have 16 XLR mix outputs. Now, with the first release of the software, those are directly routed from the 16 aux sends within the mixer. But the first software update will give you the ability to route those 16 mix outputs any way that you like within the mixer. We have an additional stereo pair of RCA inputs that you can use for a tape deck, a CD player, or an MP3 player, and we also have a headphone output. That has its own volume control, and you can switch that for monitoring the Q output or the main outputs. On the back panel, we have a pair of D-sub outputs, and those mirror what's coming out of the 16 XLR outputs on the front. The back panel also has MIDI input and output, and there are two S800 connections. Now, those would be used to connect to your computer by FireWire 800 when you're recording. Finally, we have a SpeedIF output, and that's a digital mirror of what's coming out of the main outputs. You may notice that this lower right-hand section of the back panel is actually an expansion card. There's a slot in there that can accept different cards that will give you access to different digital formats for input and output. Now, these are the same format cards as will fit into the desktop StudioLive AI consoles from PreSonus. To take charge of all the parameters inside the RM32, we use the Universal Control AI app. Now, this runs on PC, Mac, and iOS. In this case, I've got it running on a touchscreen PC laptop. So the way this works is you connect the RM32 to a wireless router using Ethernet. And then you log your computer into that same wireless router, and you have direct control over the mixer. Start up the app. Once the app is started, it'll look for connected mixers, which show up here at the bottom of the little window. When we touch on that, the mixer will open up. Let's make our screen a little bit bigger here. With this window open, we have access to all of the mixer parameters. We can scroll through all the channels. And as you select a channel, its parameters show at the top of the screen. So as we move through the channels, we're accessing each of its parameters. So we'll go back to the first input. And we can set that up for whatever type of input we want. We can choose a category, we can choose an icon for that. We can link two channels together. So if we click on that, two channels will be paired and they'll operate simultaneously. This is also where we can switch the mixer to accept input from those S800 connections. So when we change this to the digital input, now we're seeing the returns coming back from the computer. And if we switch this back off, now we're seeing the inputs from the front panel. Each channel has its own gate, and we can set that up to be either an expander or a gate, whichever way you like to use it, and you have control, of course, over all the different parameters for the gate. We can also turn that on and off by clicking up here. Each channel has its own compressor, and that can be set up for soft knee response, for hard knee response. We can also set it for auto release, and each channel has its own equalizer. So when we click on that tab, that will open up, and you can adjust all the parameters for the different bands of EQ. On the left of this view, we have control over the preamp gain. We can turn phantom power on and off. We can reverse the polarity for the channel. And we can route from the main output, the mono output, or to both. In the fader section of the mixer view, we have a solo button for each channel. We also have a mute button for each channel. And we have control over the pan for each channel in addition to a fader that sets the level for that channel. Over here on the right, we can access the 16 aux sends. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in this first release of the software, those are hard routed to the 16 mix outputs on the front. But in an upcoming update, we'll be able to route those auxes wherever you like. And when you click on the aux, you can choose that. And again, we have a solo, we have a mute for each of the auxes, and we can also open a graphic EQ for each of the auxes. In addition to that, we have a regular parametric EQ for each aux, and we also have our gate and our compressor. We have the main stereo output, which we can select by clicking here. When we click on that, we can access a graphic EQ, and we also have the gate, the compressor, and the parametric EQ for the main outputs as well. For communication with the stage, you can use the TalkBack feature. Click on the TalkBack button, and you can route one of the inputs to any number of the auxes that you want to use. We have 4 effects processors inside the StudioLive RM32AI. We can select those and then edit the effects. You can choose the different types. We have 2 different processors that will provide ambience and reverb type effects. And then we have 2 processors that provide delay effects. Now those effects processors also have their own dynamic section with a gate and a compressor and their own parametric EQ. One of the great things about a digital mixing console is that you can save presets, scenes, and mute groups very easily. Now you can recall those to instantly set your mixer back up. Here's how it works on the RM32. Simply select a track, click on the preset menu here. That will open up, and you have a whole array of different presets that you can load up that instantly configure the channel for whatever that input source is that you're choosing. So for example, here we've got kick selected. We could also choose vocals, we could choose electric guitar, overheads, upright bass. So any number of different presets are included, and you can create your own user presets as well. Now for overall preset storage, we have scenes. So we have 8 different scenes that we can quickly store and recall, and those store the configuration for the entire console. We also have 8 different mute groups, so if you want to be able to quickly turn a set of channels on and off using mute control, you can do that using those mute groups. The Universal Control app also gives you complete visual feedback of what's happening inside the RM32. So the software mixer has complete metering that shows you what's going on inside the digital console. With the StudioLive RM32AI, you've really got a full-featured digital console inside this rack box. Now the nice thing about that is that you have immediate control over all of the parameters using your computer. You can just reach out with a touchscreen like this, grab whatever parameters you want. With an iOS device, it's very similar. And if you're on a regular computer, you can just use a mouse to access those parameters. Now one of the new features in the StudioLive AI consoles from PreSonus is that you can cascade those mixers together. And with the RM32, that allows you to use this box as a stage expansion box while you have a desktop StudioLive AI console back at the mixing position. When you hook up the software, it'll see it as one large single console. We're really excited about the new StudioLive RM32AI consoles from PreSonus. With this digital console, you have all the features, all the benefits, and all the sound quality of the StudioLive AI in a compact, portable rack mount format. You can use it as an expansion for an existing desktop StudioLive AI, use it on its own, control it from a computer, from an iOS device. It's super convenient, super easy to use, and it sounds great. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.